What's up YouTube, Oliver here. Have you seen the 5.0 expansion for Final Fantasy? It looks sick, and I'm very excited. With this expansion, Dark Knight's getting a rework though, and I wanted to give my thoughts on how a possible rework could work. A rework could work. Perfect. Anyways, so when I think about Dark Knight, I think about edge, grittiness. Okay, well, not those things. Those things, but the way the class plays, it's about constant damage output. It's about managing your resources, and it's about spamming that dark arts button. And it's sort of that last thing that people hate. You know, I'm a fan of pressing buttons. I think spamming isn't exactly the most or the best way to go about that, but I think it keeps an engaging gameplay, and I want to try and keep some of that spamminess, but spread it out over I guess other buttons, so you're not only pressing dark arts. And so my first major change is to Blood Weapon. Blood Weapon is now like a dragon or Life of the Dragon style buff that you have to keep up while you're playing. It'll last 21 seconds and maxed out of 30, and it's to keep the same cooldown, and using it again resets it, just like Blood of the Dragon. Then Delirium will be used to extend it by 10 to 15 seconds, and it'll cost 50 blood. This is pretty much how it works in, I guess, OG Dark Knight, but we're cutting the cooldown to where you can use it as often as need be to keep this buff up. So that's sort of the main focus of the job now. It's like keep Blood Weapon up, use Delirium to do so. And now on to the major change to Dark Arts. So Dark Arts is too spamming. We're canning that Dark Arts. It's now your DPS stance instead of Dark Side. It has basically the same flavor as well. In exchange for not regenning your MP, it boosts up your damage. Basically the same effect, as I said. But it removes some of that spamminess that we've come to enjoy or not enjoy from the Dark Knight. And now the changes to Dark Side. Dark Side is now your Life of the Dragon style buff, an enhancement to your Blood Weapon. It lasts 21 seconds regardless of when you enter it. It just gets set to that time. It makes Quietus and Blood Spiller off global. These will be the sort of two buffs you'll be maintaining. It's like you'll want to be getting Blood Weapon up, keeping it up, and then you'll want to be going into Dark Side to deal even more damage. But how do you get into Dark Side? And this is where the management style gameplay comes into play. So, to get into Dark Side, you'll be needing to use Quietus or Blood Spiller in Blood Weapon about 5 times. I say 5 because I'm giving the player lots of tools to get lots of blood, and I don't want it to be easy to get in, but I also don't want to make it hard either. So the player has the option of playing it safe and using Delirium to keep the Blood Weapon up, or if they have excess blood or they want to play risky, they can use Blood Spiller and try and get the Dark Side faster. So that's the basis of the new Dark Knight gameplay. It still keeps that resource management playstyle, but it moves it to the gauge rather than managing MP and TP. It now has a high ceiling of skill, trying to get to Dark Side as fast as possible, but it has a low floor because you can continue to use Delirium, and while Dark Side will increase your DPS, it's still about that skill, about amassing as much blood as possible during that 21 seconds. At the same time, it stays apart from Dragoon, which I've borrowed a lot from. Dragoon's gauge management mostly comes from fulfilling the combos, while Dark Knight, it's more about using your full kit to keep a large supply of blood coming in. At the same time, the way you enter your enhanced buff is different. Dragoon's is tied to your jumps, which are on timers, whereas Dark Knight has much more play, and it's more about the player's skill of using Blood Spiller Quietus as many times as possible while the buff stays up. It makes for an engaging gameplay loop. I want to make a few more changes to the existing skills and how you acquire them now to make this sort of new system come online faster and keep the player engaged at the pre-70 levels or pre-50 levels even. So the first change is the blood price. This change is fairly simple. You can just use it in either stance. You don't need to have grit on to use it. That change extends the blood weapon since it's now your main buff. It doesn't matter which stance you're in. Now, Dark Mind, it no longer needs Dark Side. That's sort of obvious since Dark Side's no longer a thing. But you won't need Dark Arts either. The next thing is Unleashed is removed. We'll just use Abysmal Drain. These skills are redundant. You can make it a trait if you want. But I don't think we need 2 of these AoE skills. The next thing is Living Dead. When you die, you immediately enter Dark Side. This makes up for it being sort of bad. And I think having this additional effect will sort of mediate its use better as it becomes a more choice decision. It's like I can enter Dark Side now, but I only need 1 more Blood Spiller anyways, so let me use my regular cooldowns for this one. I've also gone ahead and reduced Shadow Wall's cooldown to 90 seconds because out of the 3 ultimate tank abilities, this one is sort of the worst. The Paladins has 40% reduction and the Warrior has potency dealing back, so this one would be the shortest cooldown, but it doesn't have any additional effects. And this sort of helps with the Dark Knight's cooldowns in general, being Shadow Mind is short, but only works on magic attacks. Shadow Wall takes longer, but it can be used on physical or magical attacks. The next change is the Dark Passenger, which will now cost nothing, and it restores HP equal to the damage dealt. Furthermore, Quietus will now also restore HP. This is sort of to keep that sustain tank idea going in the Dark Knight, since we removed the ability to heal through Abyssal Drain. The next thing is I'm reintroducing Scourge into the Dark Knight kit, although I'm adjusting it so it acts similarly to Circle of Scorn from the Paladin kit, except it's only single target. It'll have a cooldown of 30 seconds, it'll last 18, and when it expires you'll get 25 blood. Overall, this nerfs the Dark Knight AoE damage slightly because of the Abysmal Drain, but I think having Dark Passenger not require anything will help that, as well as being able to use Quietus more, thanks to the improved blood mechanics. So that covers it for job action changes. Now I want to look at the leveling route, as well as some possible traits and abilities you can get from 70 to 80. I'm going to start from level 1 because, as I mentioned earlier, I want to redefine the kit around using Delirium and Blood Weapon, as well as looking up how the job would play in Satasha when you're thrown in on the leveling roulette. So at level 1 is Hard Slash, that's pretty obvious. At level 4 is Spinning Slash, that way you can start getting part of the rotation down. At level 6 is Abyssal Drain, your AoE move instead of Unleash. At level 10 you have Siphon Strike, so you now have part of your aggro combo and part of your damage combo. At level 15 you get Blood Weapon. You kind of get the core of your job fairly early and can start working with it. At level 18 you get Unmend, which I don't really think anyone needs, but I don't think Square will get rid of it either, so I've kept it in. At level 26 you get Power Slash, the third hit of your aggro combo. And then at level 30, the level the job actually starts at, you get Grit and Dark Arts, the new DPS stance. At level 35 is Soul Eater, giving you the full access to your combo tree. And then at level 38 you get Delirium, as well as unlocking the Blood Gauge. At this point you won't be able to keep Blood Weapon up at all times, but you'll be able to use it often enough to where it feels like a major improvement. At level 40 you get Scourge, the dot I reintroduced, and when it expends you get 25 blood, which will help in your Delirium upkeep. At 42 you get Dark Passenger to add another off-global cooldown to your kit, as well as adding a bit of sustain. At 45 you get Dark Mind, at 46 you get Shadow Wall, and at level 50 you get Living Dead. So at level 50 you have a fairly competent kit. You have your blood weapon, you're using Delirium to keep that up, and you have a few off globals to help you do so. Moving on to the 50 and 60 section, this is about using excess blood. You'll get Quietus and Blood Spiller here, as well as a few moves that help you get a little bit more blood faster. At 52 you get Plunge, another off global, and your Gap Closer. At level 54 you get Blood Price to help you get more blood. And 56 and 58 are Blood Spiller and Quietus, your excess blood users. And at level 60 you get Dark Side, as well as the trait for Living Dead to automatically enter it. I think this makes a really good skill to get at 60. It's a clear expansion on the gameplay that you've learned up till now, and while it's still kind of hard to get into it, I'm using the 60 and 70 levels to make that easier. So let's move on to those. At 62 you get Soul Survivor. It'll do the same thing, except if you kill the enemy you'll get 50 blood, and if you don't you'll get 25. At level 64 you get Carve and Split, another off global cooldown, and since it's a threefold attack it'll act as a decent blood accumulation tool. At 68 you get Salted Earth, your ground AoE, as well as more blood accumulation, and at level 70 you get the Blackest Night, which is basically an instant 50 blood most of the time, and still functions as a good shield. With these new tools it's fairly easy to get into Dark Side, and you'll be getting into it a lot faster than you did at 60. With that I've completed up to where we're at right now, and you can sort of see where I'm coming from in this structure. From 1 to 50 you get the basics, I expand on that in 60, and make it all easier to do in 70. At the same time I've moved some of the cooler skills earlier in the leveling to give you something more interesting to do during those levels. Now that we're done with the leveling route, we can move on to the 70 and 80 skills. When designing this kit, I didn't really consider these skills besides for the last one, and I feel I've already created a pretty robust rotation and gameplay loop. So these skills are more about auxiliary and support. At level 72 I'm reintroducing Dark Dance, which reduces recast time by 10%, as well increases parry rate by 20% for 20 seconds. I gave them this skill to put them more in line with the Paladin and the Warrior, who both have skills to decrease damage passively, such as the increased block rate for Paladin and the 100% parry rate for Warrior. Dark Dance doesn't reduce damage as much as the other two skills, but it has offensive utility, which I believe makes up for it. At level 74 you get a new trait, which reduces Blood Spiller and Quietus's blood cost to 25 during Dark Side. This increases damage during your burst phase, but doesn't introduce a new mechanic or skill that the player has to learn. Level 76 is also a trait. It improves the Blackest Night. It extends the duration to 15 seconds, which is also its cooldown, as well as increasing the shield to 20% when used on other party members, making them a much better off-tank. At 78 they get a Tune, which basically counts as a Quietus or Blood Spiller towards getting into Dark Side. At level 80 the Dark Knight gets Shadow Purge, a move which ends Dark Side, deals a lot of damage, and looks really cool. And that's it! We've redesigned the Dark Knight, changed some skills, made a new leveling route, as well as came up with some new skills for the next expansion. If you liked the video, press that thumbs up button, leave a comment, and let's talk about some of the changes you would make to Dark Knight. And with that, until next time my friends.